Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today.
Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue.
I was on Facebook on Friday morning when I saw a meme saying that women wanted men to start approaching them again.
Tell me why every day I go out looking adorable, tits bouncing, skin glistening, and yet nobody ever hits on me or approaches me. Ever! Oh my god, like please. I'll take a fucking construction worker catcall at this point. Please.
The feminists told us men to leave women alone. Where's the problem? We're doing exactly what you want.
In case you missed it, we are going analog with dating this year, and the more cool girls we can get off the dating apps, I am convinced that guys will have to be guys again, and they will have to approach us in real life.
Okay, I don't know what guy needs to hear this, but literally just shoot your shot. I don't know what has happened, but you guys act like if you approach us, we're gonna like burst into flames or something. Speaking from personal experience, because there's this guy at my gym. You know how gym crushes are. Catch him looking at me all the time. Creepy. I've smiled back. I make eye contact with him, and it's really frustrating. I don't know why he's not coming over and talking to me. It is so annoying because the back and forth cat and mouse game is only fun for so long. I would love to go back to the basics of like a cringy pickup line that would make me like laugh because it's so stupid, and asking for my phone number. And guess what? It's attractive to have confidence to come over and approach me. I will give you my number. Putting the fear of rejection, control your life. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. To sum this entire gym crush story up, guess what guys? I literally matched with this guy on Circa.
This is what happens when you let feminists fuck up the dating game for everybody. Remember folks, actions have consequences. Now, I watched several of these videos of young women from Gen Z and Generation Alpha complaining about how men don't approach them, and I really had to feel for these young women because I understand why they're not being approached, and sadly the reason why they're not being approached by the men of their generations is because they're dealing with the fallout and the consequences of previous generations, mainly the baby boomer generation, and all of the sexual promiscuity they participated in. Now, when it comes down to the reason why many of the Gen Z men are not approaching many of the Gen Z women is because many of those men basically are dealing with a completely different world that is a lot more hostile to them if they go out here and cold approach the way men used to do back in the days of the baby boomers, the days of Generation X, and the days of the millennials. Back then, a man could go out here and cold approach a woman, and if he cold approached a woman, basically the worst that could happen is that the woman would go out here and possibly curse him out, and if he were in a bar or a club, maybe he would get a drink thrown in his face, or at the worst case scenario, she would possibly slap him. But the whole thing was a man didn't really lose too much if he went out here and cold approached. Unfortunately, in these days, a man has a lot more to lose in this era of the Me Too movement. Now, what many Gen Z and Generation Alpha women don't really understand is that the whole situation as related to men and women basically changed as a result of the Me Too movement, which was basically a white supremacist plan to try to go after the legacy of Bill Cosby. And as these white supremacists went out here and went on their campaign to try to go out here and demonize Bill Cosby, they recruited a whole bunch of these old boomer women, and these boomer women basically were out here on the casting couch, or they were side pieces of Bill Cosby. And what happened was that these women wanted to revise the story to try to make Bill Cosby out to be some sort of sexual predator with their allegations. And as they made their allegations, what happened was that this eventually started to mushroom into what people call the Me Too movement. And as we had this Me Too movement, it was a campaign to try to go out and demonize not only the legacy of Bill Cosby, but go after many of the black male performers who had gotten wealth and success. And as they looked to go after these black men who had wealth and success, at the same time, you had old man Roger Ailes, who basically ran Fox News. And Roger Ailes was caught in the middle of his own sexual harassment scandal. And as Roger Ailes was trying to get out of this scandal with one of his employees, Gretchen Carlson, he then offered her a $20 million cash settlement. And after Gretchen Carlson got this $20 million cash settlement, basically many of the women who were going after Bill Cosby and black men started to get caught up in their hypergamy. And as they got caught up in their hypergamy, they realized that there was a bigger money pot going after white men and white corporations, and that's where the Me Too movement basically exploded. And as the Me Too movement exploded, we had the trial of Bill Cosby as related to a case of SA. And as we had this trial, Bill Cosby was convicted. And once Bill Cosby got convicted and the white supremacists got that conviction against Bill Cosby, this basically changed the entire dating marketplace, because the legal precedent that was set by the Cosby verdict basically meant that many men out here basically knew that if they even looked to approach a woman, they could possibly wind up on criminal charges. And that's one of the things that made many men be deterred in looking to pursue a relationship with a woman, because they never knew that that woman could come back years later and then say an innocent date could be turned into a criminal charge of SA or even more heinous charges. Basically, most men were afraid to lose their freedom, and as men were afraid to lose their freedom, this verdict, going along with the Me Too movement and the women caught up in their hypergamy, had many women making allegations against men. And as they could go out here and make a simple allegation against a man could lose his job, a man could lose his professional reputation, and in some cases could possibly lose his freedom. And with that being the situation, many men basically felt that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And as these men were growing up, they wound up adapting completely and decided not to start approaching women, and just decided to walk away from women, dating, and relationships altogether. And this was further compounded by the COVID pandemic, which led to many bars and meeting spaces being closed for an extended period of time, leading to men and women being isolated for extended periods of time, and many men getting used to being alone. And then once they finally opened up, things were further exacerbated by people like Eric Adams and people like Gil Garcetti basically putting in vaccine mandates that basically further deterred people from being able to meet and socialize. And then it was further compounded by the entire economy basically going to complete shit for most Gen Z and Generation Alpha men. Most Gen Z and Generation Alpha men have not been able to enjoy any sort of economic prosperity over the 20-teens, and especially in the 2020s. I mean, when we look at the whole dating marketplace, again, most men basically ain't making that much money, because most of the women have the jobs most of the time these days in our gynocentric economy. And with women controlling the economy and controlling departments like human resources, many men can't really even get in the door to start working, and that had a major impact on men looking to approach women. Because in order for a man to be able to approach a woman, again, you have to create an environment where that man can be safe for looking to approach a woman. And sadly, when it comes down to the West, the entire environment is just so hostile towards men at this point that most men basically are not interested in looking to approach a woman anymore. Nope, they're not interested in looking to approach a woman anymore, because he can basically wind up again losing his whole personal reputation, his professional reputation, and his freedom. And that's too much for a man to lose, all if he goes out here and approaches a woman. If that man goes out here and approaches that woman, he may wind up being put in a situation where he could wind up going out here and winding up getting arrested and getting a case put on him. Or he might wind up, if he's working at a job, be called in by HR and be terminated from his position. And when it comes down to a man and his survival, he's going to put his needs first. And that's the thing that flies over the heads of many of these Gen Z women. What flies over their heads is that when it comes down to men these days, they're more focused on their survival. And one of the reasons why they're focused on their survival is because you had many of these third wave feminists basically throw a monkey wrench into the dating space. And as they threw the monkey wrench into the dating space, the boomer women basically, again, fucked up the entire game for most of their Gen Z granddaughters. They basically threw this monkey wrench into the whole situation as related to their Me Too movement. And as they threw this monkey wrench into the dating space, they didn't care about the damage, because all they were thinking about was getting a payday out of these older men. The I got mine, screw you mentality in effect. Classic boomer thinking that they were out here tricking for as side pieces on the casting couch and in bus downtown looking to scavenge whatever they could get, because they knew they were leaving the game. And as they were leaving the game, they wanted to go out here and again sabotage the game for their granddaughters and great granddaughters. That's how selfish these boomer women basically were. They weren't thinking like many of the previous generations, like the greatest generation and the silent generation. Those women basically were trying to go out here and look to give their daughters the game so that they could go out here and find a husband the way they did. But no, what happened with the boomer women is that they were a part of the feminist movement. And as they were a part of this feminist movement that was basically orchestrated by the wealthy, what happened was these women basically went out here and again had their sexual revolution, ran in these streets, and then once they started to aging out of the whole process, what they did was go out here and throw the monkey wrench into the whole situation. And that's why the dating game is completely fucked up at this point. It's completely fucked up at this point because most of these women basically went out here and again, as they were leaving the game, didn't want to see the younger women again be able to compete. Nope, they didn't want to see the younger women be able to compete because they basically, when they had their shot, they completely fucked up in the game, either going out here and again trying to go out in Hollywood and wound up on the casting couch, got turned out, or they were one of these side pieces to one of these rich guys and got turned out, or they became a single mother, or they wound up again with some sort of incurable disease. And as they wound up blowing their chance in the dating game, they decided, no, I don't want to have anybody get a chance like me, and I don't want to have to deal with competition from these younger women. So that's why you have many of these men not approaching anymore, because these women basically screwed up everything. They screwed up everything with their feminism. They screwed up everything with their Me Too movement, and they've created an environment where most men just don't want to date anymore. And many men can't really even think about dating anymore because, again, when it comes to these boomers, again, they don't want to open the door for many of these men to go out here and be put in leadership positions where they have a job and they're making good money. No, they don't want these men to have a job, because in order for a man to even think about going out here and approaching a woman, a guy gotta have his money straight. And when it comes down to America's job market has been shit for a long time. And ever since COVID ended, basically when it comes down to young guys who are like anywhere from 18 to about 30 right now, how many of these guys are working regularly? And if they are working regularly, they're basically making 1980s wages. I mean, these guys ain't really making no money. So they can't even think about approaching no woman. So most guys these days, they're focused mainly on their survival, and the few who do approach, sadly, because these women have been indoctrinated into third wave feminism, what's happened to them when they approach these women is that they're basically nasty, they're extremely rude, they have a bad attitude. I mean, and in some cases, you will even call the police on you. So basically, when it comes down to young guys are like, look, if I go and I try to talk to this woman, she either gonna go out here and look to curse me out, or she gonna say something nasty, or she gonna put a phone up in my face and make a TikTok video talking about how stupid I am. Again, men don't want to be sitting up here getting disrespected when they just trying to go out here and shoot a shot. Why would a guy want to shoot a shot if he's gonna get disrespected? Critical question I want to ask most of the women, because this was one of the reasons why I wound up walking away from a lot of women in the late 1980s, because when it came down to the girls back then, who were your grandmothers, they were caught up in their hypergamy over these dope dealers and these gangbangers. And basically, if a regular guy like me wanted to shoot my shot, basically what would happen is these same girls would go out here and curse you out, or they would threaten to go out here and have one of these dope boys go out here and do some harm to you, or one of these gang members do harm to you. And sadly for me, I had to walk away because it wasn't safe for me to approach girls back in the 1980s because the crack epidemic was going on. And now, these days, the same Gen Z man is dealing with the same type of hostility. I mean, there's no reason for a guy to approach if, one, his money ain't straight, because that's one of the things that makes many men out here, again, we want to go out here and build our lives and get our lives together. That's the one thing we want to do, but because you got these older females in HR who basically got burnt by the Pookies and the other raggedy dudes that they got involved with, they project the Pookie and the raggedy dude onto them as they're looking for a job, and they go out here and don't want to hire that guy. So Gen Z guy want to go out here and go out here and get his job and get his money and his paper straight so he can go out here and start building his life. But he can't do it because, again, you already got women on the job, again, in HR, throwing a wall up in front of him. And then as he's on the street, the granddaughter is out here, again, with all this feminist programming and all these feminist lies told to her about how bad men are, told all these lies, and then she's all defensive, and then she gets hostile. So the environment basically isn't one where a man can approach and get something like a smile, or get a girl basically saying, hey, I'm looking to go out here and shoot back at that man who's shooting his shot, and let him know, okay, I'm interested, okay, I'm available, okay, I really think that this guy, he's really confident, he's stepping out and again, taking his shot. Again, there's no environment that encourages these men to go out here and feel like there's something there for them. There's nothing there to incentivize these men. And this is what flies over the heads of many of these modern women. What flies over the heads of them is that they don't understand. You have to reward this man who goes out here and approaches. But sadly, a lot of them are caught up in the same dysfunction that many of the Gen X women who were your grandmothers are, still looking for this perfect man to show up, because this is what the rich people in Madison Avenue and Hollywood want you to do. Be out here chasing some perfect man, chasing some rich man, hoping some rich guy will show up and again be that guy who sweeps you off your feet. But sadly, what you don't know is that that's a fantasy socially constructed by Madison Avenue and Hollywood to get you buying products and keep you away from being able to have a healthy relationship with a real person, along with the feminist lie you've been told. And all these lies are the thing that keep many of these women single. Many of these feminist indoctrinated women from the third wave of feminism are just as single as the ones from the first wave of feminism. And sadly, the consequence that they're dealing with is the fact that while those older women got turned out because they wanted to go out here and have their sexual revolution, what's happening is that these men are basically completely ignoring them and having nothing to do with them, because these men value their peace. And as they believe they value their peace, they, again, sadly, are winding up in a situation where they would rather be alone with their own peace and a bowl of herbs rather than deal with the toxicity of today's modern woman, who basically is following a whole bunch of dysfunctional programming. And that dysfunctional programming that these girls have learned from 3 waves of feminism is the reason why the Gen Z woman isn't being approached, why nobody's looking to talk to them at all. Nope, not looking to talk to them at all, because it's not the whole situation about men feeling bad about being rejected. Nope, a lot of men aren't feeling bad about being rejected. It's the hostility that's directed towards them, and it's the whole situation that they could be put in where their whole freedom is imperiled, because a guy shooting his shot shouldn't have to worry about having to catch a case all because he asked a woman out. That's how bad things are, that women they're not really thinking about. Again, these days, because of the Me Too movement and the verdict of the Bill Cosby trial, basically most men are in a place where they're saying, it's just not worth it's not just worth the time to go out here and talk to any of these women, because if I talk to this woman at the job, basically she's going to accuse me of possible sexual harassment, even though all I did was just go out here and look to pay a compliment, or go out here and, even in some extreme cases, look to ask the woman out. I can go out here, she'll run to HR, say, oh, I feel uncomfortable, or this man harassed me. And basically that guy who had to go out here and struggle to get this job, going to 2, 3, 4, 5 job interviews, is basically no longer working and no longer able to make a living, and in some cases could wind up getting himself locked up. So these women sitting up here, they don't understand, a man got a lot to lose these days, and it's a lot to lose basically because of the things that many of these women insisted on. Many of these women out here, these feminists, insisted men not approach them. And a lot of these feminists, basically, they were women who basically knew that they could not compete in the social marketplace. And as they knew they couldn't compete in the social marketplace, again, these women who basically were ugly and busted or just had bad attitudes, they knew they couldn't compete in the social marketplace. And what they did was, as time has gone on, they've basically completely fucked up the game for most of these women who are scratching their head, wondering why they not getting approached. Well, unless the game basically changes where it benefits the man in any way, shape, or form, you're not going to get approached unless there's a way for this man to be able to get rewarded with something at all. There's no reason for that man to approach you, because that man figures he would do better by being alone, which is not what God wanted at all. No, God wants men and women to come together and be fruitful and multiply, but the devil got in the way with these feminists, and these feminists basically destroyed the game, and sadly, their granddaughters are suffering due to the actions of their great-grandmothers, who went out here and wanted to go out here and talk about how they wanted to be like a man, and sadly wanted to be like Eve, who wanted to think that she knew better than God. And sadly, as they went out here and tried to call themselves knowing like God and knowing and trying to be like a man, what happened with these women is that they basically destroyed the entire social marketplace. And now many of their granddaughters are trying to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out how to make things work in a whole situation where the whole interaction and relationships between men and women have become completely broken. That's what's happened now as related to things. The whole situation is just completely a mess, because now you got women begging men to go out here and pay them some attention, but there's no reason for them to pay them attention if they're going to wind up getting locked up. I mean, if you want these men to go out here and approach you, you've got to go out here and deal with this whole legal situation that the Me Too movement created. You've got to go out here and remove those barriers and give that man that incentive to go out here. Again, if in order for that man to approach, he's got to understand that there's not going to be him going to jail or him losing his job. That's the That's the minimum that people need for you to start getting men to approach you again. I mean, a lot of these women, again, they don't understand actions have consequences. And again, the consequence of the Me Too movement is that men adapted, and it may take several generations to get this whole situation completely sorted. Because again, if you've got men scared to approach, it's because they've got too much to lose. And again, you have to give them something to gain. But sadly, when it comes down to these modern women, all they're sitting there doing is whining and crying. Oh, nobody's approaching me. Well, you've got to give them a reason to approach. And again, in order for that man to approach. And I know I keep repeating this, but I want you to get it, because a lot of times when it comes to these modern women, they don't get it. They don't get the fact that, again, when it comes down to a man and you put his survival up at risk, that man's going to choose his survival over you. And you've basically created a situation where that man basically got to go out here and choose to his survival overall. And again, this is where the women don't connect the dots and don't see the overall consequences of their actions. Nope, don't see that basically you made it where you weren't being approached. You supported the third wave feminist, and now you can be like the third wave feminist all by yourself. Now, if you want to learn how to break out of this paradigm of failure that the feminists created first in the black community, because this was all done to try to undermine relations between black men and black women, and once they did that, it basically mushroomed into this mess. You can pick up my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find Why 70% of Black Women Are Single at other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And that book will explain why not only why many black women are single, but goes in depth into the paradigm of failure that has created the modern day gender war and led to so many women being single, and many women scratching their heads of Gen Z wondering why no man is approaching them. Well, no man is going to approach you if he's got everything to lose and nothing to gain. And if you want to see how we got here historically, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com as well. And that book will go in depth into showing you why we got into this woman crisis, where most women are basically sitting in bars and restaurants wondering where have all the good men gone. Well, they've all gone away because many of the women don't know how to be helpmeets to men the way God established. And as they became feminists, what happened is most of these women, again, are out here independent women who just can't find a man and just can't find a way in life. Things just aren't working out for them. And this book helps you sort it out so that you can go out here and get yourself back on track to be the woman that God wants you to be. And again, you can find that book at all the online booksellers I mentioned. And if you want to see me make more videos talking about dating and relationships, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App. By clicking the link in the description box, so I can continue going in depth on these subjects. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, E-Steam The Sands of Time. It's action and adventure in ancient Egypt in this terrific teen time travel romance. Get your copy of E-Steam The Sands of Time at your favorite online bookseller today. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this all-new Spinsterella story. Pre-order your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.